Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to episode 14 of Project LS 400. What do I have in store for this episode? First of all, I'm gonna reinstall the ECU back in its position in the passenger footwell. I want to replace the cabin air filter, show you how that's done. I want to take out the driver's seat and clean under here while I still have access to this part of the car. I want to move it later on, and then I'll only have access to the right hand side of the car. And I want to address a viewer question regarding fault code 24. A viewer said he had a problem with the car. It was a crank, no start, and the ECU flashed fault code 24. And I think it's a good moment to address that question, show the diagnosis and troubleshooting. And I want to do that in this episode because you need to have access to the ECU. So that's what I have planned for this episode, and I hope you like following me along. Let's get started. So let's start off with replacing the cabin air filters, and they live in this unit here. Sorry, I have a better view. There are a couple of wing nuts. I'm gonna undo these wing nuts, and then we should have access to both air filters or cabin air filters in there. I'm sorry for the poor viewing angle, but it's a bit cramped in here. What I had done already, you can see we're in the passenger footwell, and over there is the kick panel. It's clicked in place with three clips on the top, and then you have to slide it back and forth, and then it pops out, and then you have access to this, to the filter box. So let's release those wing nuts. See if these filters have been replaced in the previous 30 years. There's a lot of gunk coming out. So I have the lid out, two wing nuts out. Sorry, a bit cramped in here. As you can see, there's a lot of debris that came out, and I found that there were no actual filters inside the fan housing. I'll try to show you. So here you have a peek inside the filter housing. No filters in here, nowhere to be seen, so I'm gonna clean it out with some sharp air and a vacuum cleaner. Here I have both filter elements, and show you there's a small element. It can be bent in here, so that enables the installation. And there's a small step on the back side. The flat surface faces the center console, and there's a small tab in the back that faces the rear. So what you do is slide this one in first, slide it vertically up and then forward, and then you have to match those slots in here. Small slots, easier said than done, but anyway, you get the idea. Put in like this. I'm gonna do that next. So, got that in. One thing I need to mention is when you replace those filter elements is that you look for marks of coolant on the filter elements. With those white ones, it's easy to see even when they're dirty. When you see coolant marks, it's quite obvious. You also have black filter elements. They contain active carbon. They filter out more dangerous and dirty stuff. when you find coolant marks in there, must make sure to get the heater core out and have replaced that. It's leaking in that case. So up next is to install the ECU, but before I do that I'm going to disconnect the battery. Disconnect the battery charger, put that aside, take off the negative lead from the battery. I'm gonna have the car sit for a minute now so it discharges, then I'm gonna put the ECU back in. So this is where the ECU lives. It's in the panel below the glove box. Goes in like this. So that's in, everything's connected. Now I can put the battery back on, hook the battery back on, and dive into fault code 24. So I took a seat here in my workshop near the car, and I wanted to address a viewer question. A viewer by the name of Chris Perez mentioned that he had a crank no start problem with his 93 LS 400. And it flashed the fault code. So I want to explain a little about fault codes and the ECU in the LS400. So the LS400 has a pre-OBD1, pre-OBD2 onboard diagnosis system. It's fairly primitive in comparison with modern cars, but it is able to show a number of fault codes. Most fault codes are related to the ECU, the engine control unit. There are many ECUs, but in this case it's the engine control unit. And Chris mentioned he had fault code 24, and that's a fault code for the intake air temperature. When the ECU, the engine ECU, doesn't get a reading on the intake air temperature, doesn't mean the car won't start or won't run. The ECU is just going to assume that the ambient temperature is 20 degrees Celsius. I'll blink in the Fahrenheit over here somewhere, don't worry. So it has a guesstimate, so it would mean the car should normally run. It would crank and then start. And don't know what the problem is, but I have the workshop manual over here, albeit in German. Put in the translations and conversions to Fahrenheit in screen. So let's have a look at fault code 24 and what the workshop manual says. So we're in the FS department of the official LS400 workshop manual. FS stands for failure suche or fault finding, and we have diagnose code 24, and that relates to the wiring loom of the Ansauglufttemperatuurfühlers. This is mean the intake air sensor. So what you want to do in that case when you go troubleshoot fault code 24 is to check for voltage on the rear of the ECU. So that's why I didn't put the panels back in, so we can use the multimeter to do some measurements. So what you do is look for voltage. The next step is to test the temperature sensor itself, and if that is in order, you want to check the wiring loom if there is any interruption between the intake air temperature sensor and the ECU itself. There's a small wiring diagram over here. This is the IAT, intake air temperature sensor, and there are two wires you want to check, yellow, black, and the brown one, and those trace back to the ECU to a certain pin. In this case it's pin 16 and pin 18, but there's a small but. Here it shows the pin out of the ECU, and that's a 90 to 92 ECU. And Chris's LS 400 and mine are 93, and it also goes for the 94 models, have a different pinout. But I'm going to assume that Lexus didn't change the colors of the wiring, so we're just going to look for the yellow and black one and the brown one and see if we got 5 volts on there. That means that the power supply towards the intake air temperature is in order. So that's the first thing we want to test. I'm gonna do that first, and we have some readings over here. When the ambient temperature is 20 degrees Celsius, you should have a voltage reading of 1 to 3 volts. And with much higher ambient temperatures, when it's hot under the hoods and doesn't have a cold air intake, you have 60 degrees Celsius, which is quite high. You should see a voltage reading of 0.5 to 1 volts. If that's in order, you go to the next step, and that's to test the sensor itself. Here are the pins. Here is the top, the locking tab, pin 1, pin 2, and these are the readings you want to see. It is resistance measuring. So with 20 degrees Celsius, you should read 2 to 3 kilo ohms, and with 60 degrees Celsius, you should read 0.4 to 0.7 kilo ohms. And the last thing to do is fairly simple, is check the continuity in the wiring between the intake air temperature sensor and the ECU. Looking at the back of the ECU, we want to check the second plug from the left, and on the lower row there are the brown and the yellow and black wire. And please note, this is a 93-94 ECU, so you want to test this. So get your multimeter and check the voltage there. For the current ambient temperature, it should be between 1 and 3 volts. It's currently 15-16 degrees Celsius over here, so it should be my reading. So now we have the correct voltage reading here. It's time to have a peek under the hood. Next up is to test the intake air temperature sensor. It's integrated in the air volume sensor. And please note, this is a so-called Karman Vortex principle air volume sensor. It isn't a mass airflow sensor. Those came later on. You want to measure the 2 pins to the right, and we should read between 2 and 3 kilo ohms. As you can see, it's 3.07, so well, it's a bit above spec, but I consider this good. I don't have any problems with my intake air temperature. I didn't have any fault codes, but this is what you should read. And the last thing you can check, you can see I put this grommet back, is to check the continuity in this yellow and black and this brown wire that runs to the ECU. Just check for continuity. If there's an interruption here, the ECU doesn't get a signal from the temperature sensor, and that would also flash fault code 24. So that's what you want to check. So that's it for troubleshooting fault code 24. I hope it helps you out in any way or another, Chris. Please let me know if it did. The next thing I am going to do is put the ECU back in its place and put all the panels and the kick panel back in place, button up the glove box. I'm going to assume everything is running as it should, and then I'm going to take the driver's seat out, and I'll pick you up from there. To clean under there, and another reason to take out these seats is when you have to perform maintenance or repairs to the adjustment motors. They're not very delicate, but especially the adjustments, the height and tilt adjustment for the seats can go wrong, and there's a thing on the motors I want to show you later on that can be repaired very easily. In order to get them out, you have to remove those covers, and they are carpeted in the same color. On my previous LS I could hardly find them. It had black carpets. For the life of me I couldn't find the bolts that held the seat rails to the floor, so I'm gonna take these out. There are 2 on the back. Well, Short interruption. The seat rails are held in place with 14mm hex nuts, and when I wanted to loosen them, they were already loose. So apparently someone has been in here before. Don't know for what reason. But anyways, just look how easily these come out. Next up is I'm gonna raise the rear of the seat and slide it fully forward, so I have a bit more room for activities here in the rear. So the next thing I'm going to do is slide the seat backwards, and I raise it all up, and now it's halfway positioned between the most extreme positions of the seat rails, so that's easier to get out. If you leave the seat extended fully forward, the seat rails extend to the back and it's easy to scratch these panels over here. So let's see if we can wiggle it loose. There it is. Now before I take out the seat, I'm gonna switch the ignition to off and unplug the connector underneath the seat. Boy, seats are heavy. So I have the seat on my bench, on my workbench. So I have the seat now on my workbench. I want to clean it out, and especially want to clean the leather on there. And as I mentioned before, in my previous LS I had to take the seat out because one of the adjustment motors didn't work, and that was the adjustment motor for the seat itself. The back, there's an adjustment in the front, so you can tilt the seat itself up and lower it, but by raising the back you can raise the entire seat up. Of course there's adjustments for the seat back, and there is an adjustment for the headrest, it's electric, and there's the lumbar support in the rear, that's also electric. I'm gonna flip the seat over and show you what to look for if you have any problems with the seat adjustment, if one or more of these functions don't work. Now we're looking at the lower side of the seat, and there are a whole lot of adjustment motors in here. Two large ones over here. I believe that one was broken on my previous LS. You can see there's a whole lot going on, and it's quite sturdy. Here are the spindles, and here underneath there is it says seat position control, and that's also the seat position memory. Now what's interesting to see is that there is no measuring system along these spindles. Nowhere is a counter or a pulse counter in any way. So how the seat memory works is when you have your seat adjusted to your preferred position, all counters in here are reset. And when you operate the seat, any of these adjustment motors in any directions, what this memory system does is just count the amount of time that one motor is operated and in which direction it's operated. So when the driver pushes the seat memory button to return to his or her preferred position, the only thing it does is operate the motors in the opposite direction and for the exact amount of time it measured. So basically it should be back to its preset position, its preferred position. Let me try to get this one out. Just managed to unhook this one. Let's see if I can slide it out. Here is the motor, and this motor operates the rear height adjustment of the seat. So I took the liberty of almost destroying one for your entertainment purposes. So here we have the brushes, and these are the tiny springs. Can be a bit of a hassle to get it back together, but anyway, what you want to look for if one of these motors, adjustment motors, isn't working, there's a small capacitor down here, and usually when they short out over a period of time, the entire motor stops working. So when the motor is powered, there's a short circuit and nothing happens. So the first thing you want to do is to replace that capacitor. You can see if you can pull this out. No, I'm not gonna try that this time, because it was a working motor and I wanted to keep it that way. Anyway, what you want to do is just to replace that small capacitor in there, put everything back together, and it should be working as it should. So I have the motor reassembled again. It's a bit of a hassle to get the brushes in, but I recommend you put the axle in, and you can see that the brushes are in, and then put the rest of the engine over top. And what I highly recommend you do is that you test the motor and let it run in both directions on a 12-volt power supply, so you're sure that it works and that you not discover that you have a non-functioning motor once you have the seat back in. You have to repeat all this again. So let me adjust the camera. There we are. And get the motor back in. And it's back in. What I'm gonna do next is clean up a bit. It's not all too dirty in here. And I check the lubrication of the spindles, but they are okay. You don't want to over grease them. And as far as I'm concerned, things are looking fine just right now. Get the vacuum cleaner out and a brush and clean it up a little bit. So I reckon this is clean enough. Put it upright and focus on the next part. That's cleaning the seat and the leather itself. Let me turn it around a bit. You can see there's a small hole. In the future I want to have that repaired by a specialist repair shop. Now I'm just going to focus on cleaning the leather and treating smells. It still smells great. Let me see where I got my cleaning stuff. Here's my cleaning bin. Leather cleaner, it says. So I'm using this leather cleaner, and it appears to be for very light leather that has blue jeans transfer on it, but I reckon it'll work. If you don't have blue jeans transfer. Alrighty, let's start out with the seat. Just missed it. I reckon that should be enough. I just have a normal towel over here. And see what it does. Yeah, this cleans up nice. Really nice. I just get a seat out in the sun, let it dry, and then apply the leather conditioner. So with the seat out, drying in the sun, it's time to do some vacuum cleaning. This is the best shot I can give you. Since it's a bit cramped in here, I'm gonna vacuum first and then clean the carpets with a cleaning solution. When it comes to those kind of fence, I like to use a cheap painter's brush and just brush them out and get them clean. I'm not using the vacuum cleaner, but normally you could use the vacuum cleaner too. You can pull this fend out by unscrewing it. Not gonna do that now. Just get some interior cleaner on there. Let it well. It's a, hope it shows on camera, it's a textile cleaner I'm gonna use for these marks. I also saw those coffee marks on the driver's seat. I'm just going to assume that's coffee. Also our stains in the back. So here we have the stains left by the rear passengers. Small one here. The brush I'm using here is a normal, what we call a dishwasher brush, and they last forever. I'm not sure if the camera picks it up, but the carpets underneath here, under the floor mats, look a bit tarnished. They're more yellowish than these part in the middle, under the center console. And what I found is that the original factory floor mats had a, I would say, tar-like coating, a stiff tar, with the same kind of material you have in insulation panels you stick on the inside of your doors. Same kind of material, tar-like material, was under the carpets, and it deteriorated over time. Try to raise. Normally there's a pattern in here. Now you're pushing the fibers down, leaves a dark trail. I'm try to comb them up by hand so they'll dry. As you can see, I'll let me pick the camera up. As you can see there, all those small black particles. There's some left here and there. They originate from the bottom of the floor mats. I'm gonna apply some carpet clean and clean out this too. I'm gonna do that off camera and I'll show you the end result. I want to clean the lower part of the seat. I'm using Maguire's cleaner or leather conditioner to condition the leather. I like it because it has this pump. You can really dose the amount of conditioner. And then using this kind of polishing pad to apply it. I'm trying to get used to working with this microphone. I already edited this video the days before, and I noticed the lighting and both the sound were very off at times, so I bought this cheap clip-on mic. Eager to try to find out how it works for all of us. Especially when I'm filming outside. I used to film with the door open every now and then, and the ambient noises were a bit overwhelming for my phone. I also bought a new phone, so I think I have a better camera and audio now. The only thing left for me to do is to clean this carpeted covers. Such a nice detail on the LS that they even carpeted this. Let a cleaner soak in. They are a bit dirty from the grease on the seat rails. So that's clean. This is almost a wrap for this episode. As you can see, I got a seat back in. I'm gonna show you the cleaning result of the carpet in a minute. I'm gonna test the seat with myself on it, so it's loaded, so to speak. This is a motor we took out. It appears to be working just fine. Move it to its extreme positions. Tilt the seat forward. Its lowest position. Moving forward and backwards. Let's move it towards my driving position, which should be around here. It's going well, and the headrest, which is too low for everybody in my opinion, and the lumbar support is also working. Alrighty, so it was successful. Slide the seat back so I can show you the results of my cleaning. Let me get the camera. There's a light on there. Oh, there's a small piece of plastic still in here, but it came out really clean, really nice. So I just clipped off this cover, click it back in place. I thought I heard it click when I moved the seat back and forth. Hope it stays in place. Well, you got still those dark marks on here. Gonna look for the best cleaning method on that. And there's the other cover on the seat rail. So everyone, I hope you liked following me along during this episode. If you do, give me a like, maybe subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or remarks, leave a comment. And if you have an LS400 and if you have any question or difficulty with this model, I do have the workshop manual. Maybe I can help you figure out your problem. For now, thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Bye bye.